Thank you so much, Chairman C.A. Ramu sir. Thank you, Balaji sir, for the introduction, and Ramu sir for the very nice welcome address. A very warm good evening to all the participants who have joined today. I think this is my third or fourth seminar with Tirupur branch in the last 3 or 4 months, and I
We
always
have planned
enjoy.
more programs with you, sir.
I always enjoy, as Ramu
You
sir
have
rightly
that much.
says.
You have that much of resources.
Thank you, Ramu sir. It's a pleasure and privilege for me also because I love visiting Tirupur. Even when my father was chairman of SIRC and Central Council member, he used to visit Tirupur. I remember coming there as a child because I used to buy T-shirts and all for myself from the export shops. So Tirupur, I always enjoyed coming there, and the members are also been very kind to me. I interact with them on a regular basis, and it's always a pleasure to come here again. So the last talk, the reason Ramu sir has rightly selected this topic, not only is the timing perfect, but I still remember our last talk, we had a session on e-assessment where we went through all the major changes in e-assessment, how it's going to affect how we are going to, proceed as far as our assessments are concerned. In that, we also wanted to cover ITR forms, but by the time we finished the question and answer session itself, it was more than 2.5 hours. So we decided to do this program later. So I think this is the ideal time anyway, because now all the return dates have been extended, tax audit dates are extended, so we have some time. So let us understand what are the major changes in the ITR form. And let me tell you, my dear friends, there have been some very, very critical changes in the ITR form this time. Normally, year on year, we have a meeting where we will understand what are the changes in the ITR form. We discuss how many changes are there. This year, the number of changes are lesser. The number of changes are lesser, but the impact of the changes are very, very high. It is going to make a significant impact, and I'll tell you why. Because most of us here are practicing CAs, where the bread and butter for us is filing the income tax return, doing the assessment. So therefore, I'm not joking when I say if you make mistakes in as simple as filing the ITR return, it has a larger impact in the client's outflow of cash and payment of penalty fees, etc. I'll tell you why. So before we go into the specific changes in the ITR form, we have to appreciate what is happening around. Only then, if you get a 360-degree view of what is happening, then only we'll be able to appreciate why this ITR forms is important. The first critical issue is, if you have been following the news, in July you would have read that the CBDT and the CBIC have signed a pact for data sharing. Now, many of us will think, so what? What does this mean? It means what? Whatever data is there with income tax, saying if I'm having revenue of 100 rupees as per income tax returns, then as per GST returns also, naturally it should be 100 rupees only. What is this, Abhishek? Normal. We all know this. We all know this, sir. Correct. No dispute there. But let me tell you a story. I still remember almost, I think when I was doing my articleship 8 or 9 years back, this was where I was in one company when I was doing the audit. I was doing the audit of the revenue. So I asked for corroborative records. I saw the invoices. So I said, sir, can you give me your VAT records? I want to verify with that also. So please give me your VAT returns. I will check with that and I will compare. So when I compared a different scheme, so I asked that finance manager, I said, sir, difference or sir, enough. He said, Kandipa varu said difference. I said, no, okay, sir, we have to reconcile. You're saying difference will come, okay. We have to reconcile why that difference is there. He said, Abhishek, if you reconcile, it will never tally. I said, why, sir, it will never tally? He said, no, we give one set of records for income tax, we give another set of records for indirect tax. I was shocked. I said, sir, how can you do this? He said, no, don't worry, Abhishek, whatever income tax is only the correct records. You proceed with that audit only. You leave this indirect tax records. So I was very perplexed being an article student at the time. I was not sure what to do. But the truth is, this might seem humorous, it might seem funny, and nowadays, with GST being online portal, etc., the number of instances have come down. However, especially in the north, more than south, more in the north, especially Delhi, Bombay, Gujarat, and all these regions, the number of people who do misreporting, they maintain separate set of accounts. One set of books for indirect tax authorities, one set of books for direct tax authorities. Why? They are so confident that the information will never be shared. You know why? I'll tell you practical reason. Income tax officer, he sends a letter to the indirect tax authority or VAT authority. Sir, please confirm what are the sales figure. That indirect tax authority is not bound by anything. He does not have to share. If he does not share, nothing will happen. And he is not bound, there's no agreement, there's nothing treaty to the effect enforcing him to share the data. So what he will do, that VAT fellow, he'll get the letter, he'll just sit on it. அப்படியே ஃபைல்ல வச்சிருங்க சைடுல. So this used to go on, and then by the time he replies, entire assessment will be over, or that officer would have been transferred from income tax. So all of these are practical issues. Not only that, what will happen is that GST authority will give some completely different figure that the income tax would not have expected at all. It would have been a typing mistake, or he would have looked at some other client data. So all of these are practical challenges faced by the income tax today. But now with this agreement, the CBDT and CBIC agreement, let me tell you, those days are gone, where you can give different set of data to different set of authorities. All of those instances are gone. Everything will be unified. And some of you might say, in practice, how this will work, Abhishek? In theory, it is great. Once again, I call upon you. If you had read the paper last week, front page of Economic Times, notices are now being issued to assessees for pertaining to financial year 15, 16 and 16, 17. 15, 16, 16, 17, reopening notices are now being issued based on unreconciliation or non-reconciliation of the indirect tax records and the direct tax record. Where from they got this data? This agreement. This agreement is now being used to even reopen the backdate data. So why does this impact our return filing? Please ensure when you're filing the return for your client, especially the tax audit clients, ensure that you check the indirect tax records also once. If you happen to be doing the indirect tax filing yourself, then excellent, no problem, you can reconcile. But if the client themselves is doing, or maybe you are doing but you have not looked at it very seriously, ensure you reconcile both of them. If not, definitely pass the entries before you file the ultimate return or the tax audit report. The next important development, this came in September, sharing our information with the banks. Many of you will be aware that there is now a new TDS provision. There is a new TDS provision which requires you on certain cash withdrawals, there will be a TDS deduction at 5% if you don't have your return of income. Otherwise, at 1% like this, there will be a higher rate of deduction, which will be done on your cash withdrawals beyond a specified limit. Now, obviously, this TDS, some banks, they immediately had a doubt. They said, sir, if we have to do this for each of our assessees, we have to do the filing. It will take a very long time. So CBDT came out with a facility for the banks where they said for bulk uploading of data, we will make it easier for you. So why don't we enter into an agreement where we will make certain facilities available to you, you also make certain facilities available to you. Obviously, again, it seems very, very natural. And if you read this entire press release, I went through the entire order. It only talks about the TDS bulk uploading. But a few lines are there. If you go to the second page, and they say in the future also they will continue to expand this agreement. What does that mean? See, earlier, and many of you may have experienced this, many of your clients who file their return, to take even a simple salaried person, he has income from salaries, no house property, he has savings bank interest. How many assessees disclose their savings bank interest correctly? It may be less than 10,000. So you will say 80 TTA. So therefore, anyway, no tax. Okay, no problem. But you have to disclose and claim the deduction. How many assessees that you know are correctly doing it without your advice? Only when you as an auditor say, sir, if you are getting a salary, naturally you must have a savings account. So therefore, it will get credited into the savings account. Some SB interest will be there. Even if you withdraw the full amount, 1 rupee or 2 rupees also will be there as the interest. Many associates don't disclose, and many associates knowingly don't disclose. Where they say it is okay, you will not disclose, they cannot find out. Now, please remember, there is a information sharing agreement with the banks. So therefore, disclosure of information, even though today it is not there, today as per this agreement, it only talks about bulk uploading for TDS purposes. Please note that it is a matter of time. In the next 1 year or 18 months, you will find 12 to 18 months, the banks and the income tax will start exchanging information in a very simple click of a button. It's not going to be a complex procedure where they have to issue a notice, get the information, bank has to see if the notice is correct, all that will be gone. Just simply requesting, if I put the PAN number, a list of bank accounts will be displayed. I will see which bank I want the information from. I have the IFSC code, account number, branch details. Immediately, I will check with that bank and get the data immediately and a click of a button. So those days are not very far off. So ensure the cash withdrawals for explaining the source, the cash deposits that are made by the assessee are accounted properly. So only if all of these are in consent, you can protect the assessee from the information available with the department. So as you can see, the information with the department, the data today is so valuable. So the data with the department is going up and up. So far, especially after demonetization, department had so much data they did not know what to do with it. That much data they had because they did not have any software that will mine the data. For each person, they cannot have a manual assessing officer sit and understand what are the implications. Today, they've got a lot of tools, they've got a lot of software, so it is easy for them to cull out the information about the assessee. So please be very, very careful once again when it comes to your bank accounts and ensure that disclosures are correctly being made. Next, we come to the ITR forms itself. Now, many of you would have already started filing for your clients, so you are familiar with these ITR forms. And most of the ITR forms are almost identical, whatever it was to last year, except for a few important changes. You see, we all know ITR 1 is for salaried persons, ITR 2 is for individuals, maybe they have capital gains or it goes beyond the limit of ITR 1, then you come to ITR 2. ITR 3, you come when if you have any business income, you have to come to ITR 3. ITR 4 is for presumptive basis. ITR 5 is generally partnership firms, etc. get covered there. ITR 6 is for companies, 7 is for trusts, etc. So therefore, this is all the same, except the starting point, ITR 1. There are some very, very important changes that you will have to note. Please note who ITR 1 is for. For individuals being a resident other than a not ordinarily resident. Please note this. For a resident other than a not ordinarily resident. That means what? Only a resident and an ordinarily resident can file this. So if you are a non-resident or if you're a resident but you know are not an ordinary resident, in both of those cases, you cannot file ITR 1 even if it is simple. Even if you have only house property income, even if you have interest of 10 rupees only, even then, please remember you cannot file ITR 1. It is not for non-residents, it is only for resident and ordinarily resident. First important. Second point, having a total income up to rupees 50 lakhs. This is a total income, not taxable income. So total income before deductions should not have exceeded 50 lakhs. So the moment it exceeds 50 lakhs, then you have to go to ITR 2. Having income from salaries, house property, other sources, and agricultural income up to 5,000. But please wait 1 second here. I skipped one word deliberately. It says income from salaries. It does not say house property. It says one house property. It says one house property. What does this mean? Many assessees and many auditors I've interacted with, they file for their clients using ITR 1 because it is a simple ITR form. Naturally, it's easier to file, it is faster, especially we all know the experience with our clients. If the due date of filing is 31st of July, 90% of the clients, they will come on 25th of July, they will come and they'll give the data. They'll expect you to file within 6 days. If not, they will blame you. Why you didn't file, sir? Like that they will ask. So you obviously have a lot of cases to file. So you will be rushing as an auditor to file before the deadline finishes. Now, here's a very critical point. ITR1 we all prefer because it is faster, it's simple, you have that web format also, a lot of data gets pre-filled, so it's easier. But some important changes. What is the important change? And I tell you practical scenarios. This is once again practical scenario of what I have seen. We'll take a scenario where I am an assessee. I have two houses. I have one house in Tirupur. I have one house in Chennai. The Chennai house, I am living with my family. So it is a self-occupied house property. So no problem straight away. What is the rent that I'm getting or what is the let out value from the self-occupied property? It is nil. So it is zero. Now the Tirupur property you come. I'm earning a rent of let's say 1 lakh after all deduction, standard deduction, everything. I'm getting a net income from my house property of 1 lakh. Now what I do is I file ITR1. I'm disclosing salary X amount, okay. Income from house property, 1 lakh I'm putting. Other sources I'm disclosing. Deductions, everything I put, I'm filing it. Now here, there is no wrong disclosure. What do I mean? Or rather, all my amounts are correct. Salary is correct. House property amount also correct. My deductions also correct. My tax payable also correct. Tax paid also correct. So everything is correct. So even though I have two house properties, there's nothing wrong in my figures. So therefore, the return is correct. How can they say I made a mistake? Please note that even till last year also the forms were very clear where they said if you have one house property only you can file. But this year onwards, they made it abundantly clear saying if there are scenarios, and this trust me because I've had multiple discussions with the CBDT and the finance ministry on certain points that have come into here. They're being very, very serious about the income tax returns this year. So they have very, very seriously said if there is a scenario where you have two house properties, even if both house properties are self occupied and nil, you cannot file ITR1 because ITR1 is for only a single house property. So please note where you have two house properties or more than one house property, even if all the figures are correct, even if your tax payable deductions, income from house, everything is correct, despite that you have made a wrong disclosure, we will initiate penal action against you or we will treat it as a defective return. This is something they're being very, very clear about. The department till this date, they were very kind-hearted. They're very kind-hearted. There are many scenarios you may think, but last year only I filed and nothing happened. I got a refund also. Till last year, they did not question. Even if they have the data available with them, they did not question. This year onwards, they are going to start questioning. Please remember, as discussed in our last seminar also, this year onwards, there is going to be faceless assessment. So you cannot approach that officer who's sitting in Tirupur and ask him to help. If some person sitting out of Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Bombay, somewhere, he is a very strict officer. He says, no, 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 wrong disclosure. You please file rectification or I will initiate penal action for you. Your client is in a problem. So please be very, very careful over here when you're. Now, the second important point, the same thing, house property. I am a owner of a house property that is in Chennai. I don't have a Tirupur house, only Chennai house I have now. So a single house property. But this house property is owned 50% in my name, 50% in my wife's name. So therefore 50% I'm owner, 50% she is owner. Now here one question is asked. When Abhishek is filing his return of income, see Abhishek Murali is filing the return of income. Here, how many house properties does Abhishek have? He has only one house property. He has salaries, he has other sources. It is all within 50 lakhs. So therefore ITR1 seems correct only. And whatever we have discussed so far as to what should form part of ITR1, there also it is meeting all the criteria. So therefore, logically, ITR1 only should have been filed until so many years for many clients would have been filing ITR1 in these scenarios. But this year onwards, they have issued a new clarification. What is this new clarification? They have said where in cases of co-ownership, where there is any co-ownership of the house property, henceforth you must file ITR2 or ITR3 only. You cannot file ITR1. Even You might think, Abhishek, what about a scenario? You said 50% your owner, 50% your wife is the owner. In a scenario where 99% you're the owner and only 1% you have somebody else owner, it does not matter. Even in that scenario also, you must file ITR 2 only. You cannot file ITR 1. So any form of co-ownership, any percentage of co-ownership, it must be filed in ITR 1 only. You cannot use any, sorry, it cannot be filed in ITR 1. It must be filed in ITR 2 or ITR 3 only. If you don't file it, defective. They have made themselves very, very clear. It might seem extremely harsh also sometimes because all your figures are tallying. They are saying one house property, that one house property. If you go to the income tax website, you go to where the income tax forms are available. There, if you read the wording, will say one house property. It will not say ownership excluded. But a clarification was issued by the CBDT saying ownership means it is more than one house property. That's how we will calculate it. So please file in ITR 2 or ITR 3. Now, one more very, very important change there in ITR 1. Look at what I have put in brackets over there. ITR 1 is not for an individual who's either a director in a company or has invested in unlisted equity shares. Why is this an important point? I will tell you as we go forward in the next slides. Now, the seventh proviso 139. Now, this is the major change when it comes to the income tax return forms as far as this year is concerned. So, there's a new seventh proviso which was introduced to section 139. Till date, till so many years now, we are all being used to who should file income tax returns when your maximum amount chargeable to tax exceeds rupees 2,50,000, then you must file an income tax return. If you are a senior citizen, 3 lakh, very senior means 5 lakhs. If it is below that limit, no need to file the return of income. If you want to claim a loss, you have to file a return. If you want a refund, you have to file a return. Very straightforward, we all know this. This year onwards, now they are saying we will not only look at your income criteria, we will see expenses also. So if you meet certain outflow criteria also, you have to file a return of income. So what are these criteria? What are the criteria? First criteria, have you deposited amounts or an aggregate of amounts exceeding rupees 1 crore or more in a current account during the year? Even if you have no business, even if you have no income, it's a loss making company or loss making proprietorship that you're having. Even in that case, if you are having deposits exceeding rupees 1 crore, then you have to file the return of it. You may ask, I have withdrawals also equal to the same amount. It does not matter. The moment your deposits exceed rupees 1 crore, whether they are capital or revenue in nature, whether they are personal or business, all that they don't care, they are saying you have to file the return. Okay, fine. We have understood. Clear. Now the next point. Have you incurred an expenditure of an amount or aggregate of amounts exceeding rupees 1 lakh on consumption of electricity in the previous year? Now here I have a question for you, my dear friends. I'll once again read the line. Have you incurred expenditure of an amount exceeding rupees 1 lakh on consumption of electricity during the previous year? Now I'll give you a scenario. And once again, it's a practical scenario. And many of you may be facing this. You have a client, she's a senior citizen lady over here, and she is staying with her husband. Both of them are senior citizens. Both of them are retired, they are getting pension, or they're not earning any money in India. What they are doing? They are staying in India. Their son or their daughter is living in the US. They are working in a very huge IT company, very big position they are holding. They are earning in dollars. So what they are doing, they are telling, Amma kavalapadadinga, enna selavu irundhalum I will take care from here. So any bills that you are having, you tell me, I will pay. So they want to stay in India because their family is there, their temple is there, all that they want to go. So they are saying we will not move to the US. So son is saying, don't worry, I will take care of all your expenses. So all their bills, they will send it to their son. Their son, he will log in and he will make the payment from the US. So clarify and answer me this. Who has to file the return of income in this case? Have you incurred an expenditure of an amount or aggregate of amount exceeding rupees 1 lakh on consumption of electricity? Now here, the person incurring the expenditure is the son who's sitting in the US. The person consuming the electricity is the senior citizen parent sitting in India, and it's exceeding 1 lakh. So who has to file the return? Does the son who has no income in India? He's a green card holder, he's a citizen in the America, and he does not have any assets, he does not have any income in India. Does that person have to file the return of income? Or does this person who's consuming the electricity sitting in India, does she have to file the return of income? And there is a vagueness. There is a vagueness here as to who should file the return of income. I'm sure many of you will be thinking, what is the right answer? Is it the person who's sitting in the US, or is it the person who's consuming the electricity sitting in India? Because naturally we'll all think if income tax has to get the information, then they will get in the name of who that electricity box is registered in. So therefore that person only has to file the return of income. Like that we will think. But wait a minute, there is a third condition. If you notice, I skipped the middle line and I went to the third line itself here. Now we will come to the second line, the middle line. Have you incurred an expenditure of an amount or an aggregate of amount exceeding rupees 2 lakhs for travel to a foreign country for either yourself or any other person? Look at that. Look at that wording over there. What does it say? Hi Abhishek, I'm going abroad. I'm going to the US. So I'm paying for my air travel bill. My bill, I'm going in business class. So it costs me around 3 lakhs like that. So I've spent 3 lakhs to go to a foreign country, and 3 lakhs I've spent over there. Now I have to file my return of income. It's very clear. Now I spent 3 lakhs for both my wife and I. So now the question asks, should I file the return or should she file? Or should we split it 1.5, 1.5? Then we do not cross that 2 lakh limit. But what does it say? Have you incurred an expenditure either for yourself or for any other person? So whoever is spending that money, the responsibility is cast on them to file the return of income. So me, Abhishek, I am booking the tickets for my wife, for my son, for my parents. I am booking the tickets abroad. Even if I don't have any income, I have to now file my return. Similarly, going back to the scenario of the consumption of electricity, the logic, this is the logic dictates. If for that you are saying whoever is incurring the expenditure, they have to only file whether they are traveling or not. Then here also, whoever is incurring the expenditure has to file the return of income whether they're consuming or not. So therefore, the boy, the non-resident son, who's sitting in United States, who's sitting in United Kingdom, he has to file the return of income in India suddenly now. He has to get a PAN number. He has to file the return. He has to say, I have incurred the expenditure, so I am filing the return of income as per 7th proviso under section 130. So it is a little complex provision. The logic, now some of you may be thinking, why they are bringing such a complex provision? Why expenditure based they bring? The idea behind this amendment, why the government brought this amendment, is to catch businesses who are doing completely their business they are doing in cash. You walk down the street, wherever your house is there, within 15 to 20 minutes radius, 100% you will find a line of shops. Somewhere it will be there. Now you can ask each of those shops how much billing they will do. Some of them will be doing a billing of almost 2 to 3 lakhs per month. They may have equal expenditure or they may have some amount of expenditure. But whatever business they are doing, 95% of these people, they do not even have a PAN number, let alone file their income tax returns. They don't do it. But they are running a business. They are running more than 12 hours. They are doing a very busy business. They are having more than 30, 40 customers minimum come every 6 hours. So when that is the case, shouldn't they have to file the return of income? Who will the income tax track them? They cannot send a survey team for each shop on every road. That is going to be impractical. So now the income tax are very smartly said, yes, it's difficult for us to track his income because his entire income is in cash, almost his entire expenses are in cash. But certain expenses are unavoidable, especially us being in Tamil Nadu, we know now certain electricity bills exceeding a certain amount, you have to now pay mandatorily by online banking or by check. You cannot pay by cash anymore. So therefore, somewhere in the books, either in your bank statement or somebody else's bank statement, it is going to come that X amount has been paid against the consumption of electricity for that house or for that shop. People who own that house or own that shop and they've let it out on rent into the shop, they are getting the rental money by cash. There's no rental agreement. That person who's running the business, all his receipts are by cash. All his expenses, 90% of it are by cash, except that small 10%, which is unavoidable. Unavoidable expense. So one of those expenses is electricity. So therefore, this is a way for the income tax to catch those businesses who are doing very thriving businesses almost entirely in cash, but where they are failing to do a non-cash transaction or where they are doing a non-cash transaction, income tax is using that as a net to trap them and to bring them into the income tax loop. So therefore, they will get the data from TNEB. They will know who is consuming electricity. They will come and they will ask the original owner of the house, you have consumed so much, why you have not shown this in the income tax return? Then he will say, no sir, actually I given it to a shop. That shop he has only consumed, sir, not me. So therefore you have to go and ask him. Then he's caught. So this is the ideology behind these amendments. Similarly, even for the foreign travel, so many people are traveling abroad where they are not filing the return of income. Where from they are getting the money to book these tickets for the travel, we really don't know. So the reason is very, very simple and straightforward. They means they are getting the business. They are getting some cash business they are doing somewhere. They are getting the money from there. They are spending it on the foreign travel. So therefore, foreign travel details they will get it from the passport offices. Electricity details they will get it from the TNEB or the respective state electricity department, and they will be able to attack the people. So that is the rationale behind this seventh proviso to 139.1. But in the process of this, certain genuine assessees also, especially the non-resident assessees, they will also be affected. They will have to file the return of income. Advise all your clients who have any relations living abroad, ask them whether they are traveling abroad. Many senior citizens, their children only booked their foreign travel for them. So suddenly these people are traveling abroad. That means the person who's incurring the expenditure, that son, daughter who's sitting in the US, he has to file the return of income in India now. Ensure it is done, because if not, notices will definitely start being issued. If not today, within 6 months from today, it will come. The next one, when it comes to your house property, another very important change. Who cannot file ITR 1? If a assessee has any brought forward loss or carry forward loss on income from house property, then he can no longer file his return through ITR 1. So therefore, please note this, especially going forward, till date, till a few years back rather, you are allowed to set off your loss from house property unlimited against other heads of income. So many people, they bought large houses or they constructed large houses, they took loans from the bank and they taxed planned for next to 20 years, like that the loan repayment period will be there, like that they did a lot of long-term tax planning. Suddenly the government came and they made an amendment saying, yes, loss from house property you can set off, but to a maximum of 2 lakhs against other heads of income. So suddenly what happened? People were put in a difficult situation where their tax planning has gone for a waste. So therefore, the losses that they have up to 2 lakhs, they'll set it off against their other income. Anything in excess of that, they have to carry it forward. In these scenarios, please note, if you want to have any carry forward, you cannot file ITR 1. You have to file other than ITR 1. So ITR 2 or ITR 3 has to be filed. Please be very, very careful, because once again, I'm repeating at the cost of repetition, if you file the wrong ITR form, if you use the wrong ITR form, they are going to very, very seriously treat it as invalid. It's going to be treated as invalid. It's a very pitiable situation where it is treated as invalid, not because of difference in numbers, not because you did not want to disclose, but because it was an easier form and you chose it. But they are saying it is invalid because you have wrongly disclosed. So be very, very careful when it comes to selection of which ITR you are filing. Use all the categories that I've told you. Keep that in mind. The next major change is one thing called the Schedule DI. This is because of the coronavirus. You're all aware. From 25th of March, the whole of India went into a lockdown. We went into a very, very serious lockdown. And therefore, we are still technically in the lockdown. We are in unlock that is going on. And as you can see across Europe, there are multiple lockdowns which are happening. Maybe in India also in the future, it can happen. So the government very, very wisely, what they did was because many people who do their investments under ATC, ATD, etc., they do it at the end of the year. Because as chartered accountants, I'm sure most of us do it at the starting of the year. So 1st of April, that first week of April, we'll all try to make our investment. But similarly, certain other people are there who they remember by the last month of April, or rather last month of March. So they'll think anytime in March we will do it, last week we will do it. Whenever that last minute comes, we will make the investment like that. But unfortunately for those people, because of the lockdown from 25th of March, 7 days were left, but they could not invest. So due to that, the government extended the time. So people who want to reinvest, they can reinvest in ATC, ATD and all up to 31st of July. They gave them time. Initially 30th June, they extended it to 31st of July. There's no further extension. The last date was 31st of July. So now a doubt came up. And in fact, even I had this doubt. Being a person who invests in April, I was thinking, if I invest now in April, will they take it as if investment for last year or will they take it for investment of next year? Because the clarity was not there. It was a sudden change, right? Nobody could preempt this coronavirus, so we did not know what was the solution. So we were all delaying our investment. Then finally they announced saying that we will have this schedule DI, where if you have made any investments up to 31st of March for the current year, then you can put it in column 2. If you have made any investments from April to 31st of July 2020 pertaining to financial year 1920, then you put it in column 3. So therefore, they wanted this segregation. So you get an option. If I've invested in April, then I can choose whether I want it to come in financial year 1920 or do I want it to form part of financial year 2021. So that is the reason this schedule is there. The next is schedule 80D. Now, by experience, many of you would have seen this 80D schedule is a very contentious schedule. Why it is contentious is because of the format. You see, for many years now, almost every year you would have seen that ATD, how it is framed in your ITR form would have been changing. First, they had a single line saying ATD, how much you want to claim, you have to type in the amount. Second, what they did, they put a drop down box saying that you select which category does it come, senior citizen, non-senior. Then what they did, then they put breakup. They said you put in each breakup like this. Don't put drop down box. You put a breakup like this. Then what they did, they said no, we are going to put a separate schedule itself. Why all of these changes? Why year on year for the last 5 years you have been making changes like this? The logic is simple. See, when they had a single line item, and this is an experience that I faced even in my office, where some of the articles who are filing the return of income, when they are filling for ATD, they look at the Mediclaim form. Now, there's an assessee who's a pilot. He's a pilot. He is around 35 years of age. He has got a Mediclaim with LIC or one of these companies where he says for the next 10 years, he has to put rupees 1,50,000 as a premium for the next 10 years. If he does that, then he is protected for his life. He has Mediclaim protection for his life. But for the next 10 years, the outflow will be 1,50,000 only for himself. Only for himself. It is not covering his wife, it is not covering his senior citizen parents or nothing. So when my staff are filling this form, they look at ATD, they look at the invoice, they will say, okay, 1,50,000, they will type. Now, if you look at ATD section, it has a lot of subsections to it. It has a lot of provisional clauses. If you are a normal aged person, up to 25,000 you can claim. Preventive health checkup up to 5,000. If you are a senior citizen, then up to 50,000 you can claim. Preventive health checkup in case of senior citizen, additional 50,000 they can claim if you have not got a health insurance. Then if your parents are senior citizens, then an additional 50,000. So therefore up to 1 lakh you can claim under ATD. So when you have a single line item in the ITR form, there is no clarity under what heading you are claiming. So therefore, in this assessee's case, maximum that you can claim is only 25,000. But my staff have looked at the invoice and they have typed what is there as per invoice. The system thinks, oh, he's put 1,50,000. That means he's claiming for himself, who's a senior citizen. He is also claiming for his parents, who must be senior citizens. So I will allow up to 1 lakh. So many income tax returns have been processed assuming that they are very, very senior citizens, assessee also senior citizen, parents also senior citizen, so therefore it should be allowed. So therefore, like that, many income tax returns have been processed. Many refunds have also been issued to assessees, thinking that this is the case. But it is a system error. It is a system error. See, each time the income tax was trying to get some clarity, how we can make it clearer, how we can make it easier for these mistakes to avoid. But every time, department assessees were also continuing to make that mistake. So this time, what they did, they said we'll put a separate schedule itself. So this ETD schedule they brought, as you can see on your screen, you have to give this entire breakup, whether you're a senior citizen, yes or no, whether you're claiming for your parents, yes or no, or your parents senior citizens, yes or no. You have to click all this and then you have to fill it up. You cannot file a return of income without filling this out. Even if you have no mediclaim expenses, even if I have no mediclaim expenses, I have to still compulsorily fill this form. If I don't fill this form, it will not accept my return. I cannot submit my return. I have to compulsorily fill this. So that is the reason they have brought this change. This is one important change that has come in this form. The next one, you remember at the start of the presentation, I said when ITR one additional line is there in brackets. If you are a director in a company or you hold any unlisted shares, you cannot file ITR 1. Now, if you are a director in a company, they want you to fill out the details, name of the company, type of the company, PAN number of the company, whether the company is listed or unlisted, what is your DIN number as a director, all of these details they're asking you to compulsorily fill out. Now, I'll give you a scenario where one of my clients, he started a company a long time back. And he and his friends did it together. Company did not take off. So they just left the company and they went on to join jobs and he become a very, very high ranking person. So this year when we are filing the return of income, I happened to ask him, so are you a director? Are you unlisted share? Do you have it? He said, no, nothing. But we have a format in our office, we have a checklist where for every person beyond a certain limit who are filing ITR2, we have to do a mandatory check on the income tax and MCA website to see whether they are directors. So when we are doing a check for this client, we came to know that he was a director in a company. So then we checked with him, sir, are you a director in this company? Because we got the information from MCA website that you are a director in this company. He said, Abhishek, I started that 25 years back and that company is gone. We have not done anything. I said, okay, sir. So have you wound up the company? Now, as chartered accountants, many of us do incorporation work. Lot of clients will get for incorporation, lot of partnership deals will be. How many of you do liquidation and winding up work? Very, very hard. Very, very few. You can even count in the number of your fingers how many people do winding up work. So therefore, winding up of companies is not being done because people, when they start, they don't close. So therefore, even though you may not be a director in a company, please ask each and every assessee who comes to you as to whether they ever started a company. So in my client's case, he may have been disqualified as a director by whatever strike-off procedure has been initiated by MCA, but he still continues to hold unlisted shares. And therefore, when you hold unlisted shares, you have to fill up this category. So name of the company, type of the company, PAN number, how many shares you hold, how many opening shares you had, how many you sold, purchased during the closing share. All of these details you have to now furnish. And once again, if you don't furnish, it will be treated as invalid return. Now, why this is very important? Why I am repeatedly saying it is invalid return, invalid? You will get an opportunity where it is being treated as invalid return. You will get an opportunity to correct it within 15 days. But please note, once again, faceless assessment is now in effect. So when earlier you could have gone to your assessing officer in Tirupur, you can no longer do that. It is somebody who is going to be situated anywhere across India. Therefore, it is all completely at his discretion. That means our role as chartered accountants at the time of filing the return of income becomes more important. It puts a more onus on us. It casts a responsibility on us to ensure that all the disclosures are correct and that there is no invalidators. Like that, if you search on Google, you can see what and all companies Mukesh Ambani is a director of. Similarly, you put any person name, you can search, you can put your own name and see whether you're a director in a company, it will come up, it is there for free. without paying any money. It's therefore free. The information is available on a simple Google search. So therefore, all of this information is available to the assing officer also. They can further go to MCA and get the information if they want. But please remember, it is all in public domain today. So ensure that the disclosure details is done very, very correctly and very carefully also. Of course, one more change is you all know now that the 5% limit has come, where cash receipts, if it is within 5%, then you can do cash receipts or payments is within 5%. Your tax audit limit is extended to rupees 5 crores rupees. So those details, if you are filing under that particular clause, then you have to select that in your ITR form. Last year, the Honorable Finance Minister announced certain new schemes, 115 BAA and BAB. That is a tax rate, a concessional tax rate of a mere 15% for new companies who are in the manufacturing sector, 22% for other companies. And if you want to enjoy all of this, you can come and take the benefit under these sections. So therefore, if you are taking the benefit under those sections, you have to tick this specific line item because it will have its own sort of assessment which will be done separately. So therefore, this is a new addition which is there in the ITF. Details of key persons, key management persons. This was already there earlier. There's no problem. This is not something which is new. They had already been asking for it. The only important point here is they've added one word. They have said when they are talking about the key management person, they have said eligible person must be signing this form. Now, when they say eligible person, there's a very loaded statement there. No, I'm in fact handling a few cases from Tripur on this point, and some of you, I think you are live there who I'm working with for this. Where in the MCA, we have gone to the NCLT for the strike off of companies, where companies have not filed their annual return for 3 years or more. They have straight away gone to the strike off. So when they have done this strike off, the directors are also affected in the process because they have been disqualified now. They have to go to the NCLT, reinstate the company and file the returns, or prove that they are not directors of the company, or they have given up their directorship of the company, or they have nothing to do with the company. Like this, they have to file in the NCLT and get a decision. So now eligible person here becomes a loaded statement. You must ensure that this director, whoever is signing the income tax return, he is not disqualified by the MCA. So just you have to do that additional check when you are filing the return of income. Now this schedule is the shareholding of an unlisted company. This is not something new. It has always been there. But what is new, I will tell you. Till now, many auditors, when we are filling out this form, details of shareholders, name, residential status, what we used to put, ZZZZZZZ, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that people used to file and they used to file the return of income. This year, they have made it very, very clear, saying this has to be filled. If it is not filled properly, it will be treated as invalid and a defective return. So once again, be very careful when you're filling out your details of the shareholders, fill out properly to whatever information you have. Do not put that ZZ, ABCD, 1, 2, 3, 4, all of that you cannot do it. Next comes one of the most irritating schedules as far as income tax filing is concerned. And I'm sure all of you will agree with me when it comes to your schedule under 112A. Till last year, section 1038 was there, where on sale of long-term capital gains on sale of shares, which are listed on a recognized stock exchange where STT is paid, it was completely exempt from any kind of tax. Then they introduced 112A, where they said up to 1 lakh, it will be exempt. Beyond that, taxable at 10%. Now, we thought that was a contentious change, but whatever, it has come. But what they have complicated in the ITR form, they want you to fill out each share unit that you have sold. You have to get the ISIN code, you have to get number of shares, what price they have sold it for, what price they purchased, grandfathering price, what was the highest value of the share as of 31st January 2018. All of these details you have to get and you have to fill it. And if your assessee has done 100 transactions in the year, then unfortunately for them, they have to fill out 100 line items. Ooh, you have to fill as an auditor, they are expecting you to do it. 100 line items, 200 line items, you have to sit and fill. Highly unfortunately, very time consuming, and that too, some mistakes come means it is very difficult because that 1 lakh exemption does not get calculated otherwise. So we had raised a lot of complaints here. And I'll tell you one more practical issue you will face is the ISIN code for shares is very easily available. I can Google it. If I Google the share name and search for ISIN code, I can get it. But for mutual funds, many mutual funds, the ISIN code is not easily available. For all our clients who are dealing with mutual funds, we are specifically requesting the broker to give the details of the ISIN code. And it takes almost 2 days for them to get back. He will ask the client, client will ask the broker, he will ask the company, they will get the details of the ISIN code. So this entire process will take almost 2 days minimum time. So therefore, if your client are dealing in mutual funds, when you are filling this schedule, you have to definitely ask them for it. Now, one common question that I get asked whenever I speak on income tax forms is it mandatory to fill this schedule? Can I skip this schedule altogether? So please remember, till last year, it was not mandatory. They made it very clear last year when this came out. I had specifically made a representation and they said that it is not mandatory, it is optional. And obviously, when some schedule like this is optional, nobody is going to take up the option. It's a very, very time consuming schedule. So this year also we asked, is it compulsory? They initially did not reply. But this month, the first week of October, they came out with a clarification, CBDT. They said, no need to fill 112A schedule. Oh, excellent. But for who? For people who are trading in stocks, you need not fill the 112A schedule. This was very, very silly because someone who's trading in stocks, someone who's doing a business of stocks, he'll never fill 112A because it is a business income. It is not going to come under 112A at all. It will be forming part of his P&L balance sheet and it will go as a business heading. They are saying 112A for stock trading you need not fill, but for investors you have to fill. 112A itself is for investors only. Why you have to come out this clarification at all? Who else is going to fill other than investors? So in my view, it is still a very, very compulsory schedule and you must fill it. And unfortunately today we are in a scenario of faceless assessment. If you don't fill, they will say invalid and you are not filled properly. You are not disclosed properly. So there is one more announcement that came out recently. And I've raised it with the finance ministry actually, where they said, no, SEBI and CBDT have signed an agreement. SEBI and CBDT have signed an agreement. So they are saying, today, if you have any sales of shares and you are not disclosing it, then we will get the information from SEBI and take action against you. Like that, the income tax are now saying. I said, sir, now you both have an agreement. When you both have an agreement and the data is being shared by them, you pre-fill that 112A schedule. Why you are asking me to do it? Both of you have agreement now, no? So you pre-fill it. It is between you two, you can check easily. So why I should sit as an auditor or as an assessee? Why I should sit and fill 200 line items? Search for ISIN code, search for the highest price as on 31st January. You make our life easier now that you have an agreement. So therefore, I think this is an issue that I took up quite publicly also, and I received information that I can share is that in the future, they will have it to be auto-populated. But as of now, it is something that we have to fill, and they have not given us any relief. We will hope that we'll try and get a relief for this over the next month or so, and request it to be made an optional schedule. But as it stands, it is compulsory. We have to fill it. If we don't, they will say invalid and we will have an issue. Next is the foreign assets details. We have to also furnish additionally the details of the foreign assets with the address. You have to furnish it with the zip code, and all of this also is required now. So this is an additional requirement and they will check it with the information. Now this is the most important amendment. This is the most important amendment. The Honorable Finance Minister in her budget last year, she had specifically told that 26 AS is going to become like an income tax passbook. What did she mean? Till now, your 26 AS will show your TDS. So that's what they have been used for. How much is the TDS credited? How much is the TDS deducted and remitted? Then you'll also have any self-assessment tax paid, any advance tax paid. All of that will be reflected in 26 AS. We all know that. Slowly, it started having more information. 194 A. If you have purchased any mutual funds beyond a certain limit, all of this also started coming. So now the Honorable Finance Minister has said it is no longer going to be a mere tax deducted statement. it is now the 26 years will become an annual information statement. So it is going to become like your passbook. What does she mean by passbook? If you have any foreign companies or foreign taxes or any foreign income, that will come in your 26 years. If there are any pending proceedings, you are at appeal stage at the CIT or ITAT or High Court, all of that information will also come now in your 26 years. Why? Many times we used to say, lots of cases going on in ITAT, you please give us a longer stay, like that we will say at CIT. But actually, case will be over at ITAT. It simply will be saying, okay, client wants some time, we'll go and say this. So therefore, they have no ways of checking unless they put certain extra efforts. Now everything is going to come in your 26 years. This year, these assessment years have finished the proceedings. Then information of any demand or refund. We all know the challenging position where we face. Suddenly this year refund is going to come for you. You will get a mail saying adjusted against your demands pertaining to 2005-6. You would have got it or not? How many of you would have incurred the situation where your refund for your client for the current year is suddenly adjusted against some old demand that you are not even aware of? You are also not aware. Client is also not aware. No notice is issued, no notice is received, but they are adjusting the demand suo moto without any opportunity given. All of these are practical issues that many auditors are facing. So therefore, what have they said? In the 26 years itself, we'll publish whatever demands are due from you, whatever refunds are due to you. So straight away, if it is not in that, you can immediately take up action and find out what has gone wrong. They cannot come back at a later date and say, no, we missed the demand. We know we are adding it like that. They cannot say if they don't have the adequate paperwork to back it up. Similarly, cash payments of credit card bills exceeding rupees 1 lakh, it will come in your 26 years. Any FDs, shares, mutual funds, bonds, debentures purchased exceeding rupees 10 lakhs, it will come. Receipt of foreign exchange currency exceeding rupees 10 lakhs, it will come in your 26 years. Any expenses in foreign currency beyond that limit, it will come in your 26 years. And it does not end there. You will think, okay, so much information, abba, podumpa, then last month, or rather in August, our Honorable Prime Minister made an announcement, transparent taxation, like that one big announcement was there. In that, certain additional criteria he has said will come in your 26 years. Payment of educational fee, you're paying for school fees, you're paying for your college fees for your son, your daughter, exceeding rupees 1 lakh per annum, that will come in your 26 years. Electricity consumption exceeding rupees 1 lakh, 26 years. Any business class travel, that will come in your 26 years. Payment to hotels exceeding 20,000, 26 years. Purchase of jewelry, 26 years. Deposit credit, 26 years. Property tax exceeding rupees 20,000, 26 years. Health premium payment, 20,000 or more, that will also come in your 26 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, you may ask, sir, so many things will come in 26 years. What is the implication? Now, many calls I have already started getting from auditors where they're asking doubts. Sir, this has come in my 26 years. What should I do? Should I have to disclose it? This does not mean you have to disclose it. These are all expenses. It is coming as a noting point in your 26 years. But what it does mean is you should ensure your client has adequate source for it. It cannot be he is paying educational fees of 10 lakh rupees for his daughter, but his business for the last 30 years, it has not earned more than 2 lakh 50,000. But he is paying 10 lakhs fees for his daughter. He is paying 1 crore fees as educational fees for his son. All of these details, it has to corroborate with the source. So therefore, now the expenses has publicly been made available to the income tax authorities. And they are saying, look, we have all this information with us. We are showing it to you in your 26 years, what and all details we have. Now you disclose your return properly. If you show your income to be lesser than what your source should be for incurring these expenses, then we will definitely initiate action against you. So that is the rationale behind this change. So don't get shocked. This detail has come in my 26 years. It is okay. But you should ensure that your client has the source to have incurred those expenses. If he doesn't, ensure that before you file the return of income, you bring it to tax at least in the current year if it has got missed in the earlier years. Some other very, very interesting developments which has come in the last few weeks. On October 20th, last week alone, one very important suggestion came because I know Tirupur is a business hub and a lot of appeals I'm handling for auditors there. And survey cases are quite common there. So now they've announced a new announcement. IT survey will be conducted only after a nod has been given, approval has been given by high ranked officers. That means principal commissioner or principal chief commissioner has to approve every survey that is going to be done. So they cannot simply suddenly come to your office. Only TDS officers now will have the power to come to your office for survey. Your regular officers, because there are so many scenarios that have happened. One case that I handled, which was referred by another auditor, he was under pressure from the assessing officer to pay tax. He had gone for a stay, but the officer did not want to wait till the stay hearing came up. Actually, she is supposed to wait, but the officer did not want to wait. She initiated action against the assessee saying, "You have to pay the amount." He said, "I am gone for stay. If it gets rejected, I will pay fully. Please allow me," because a high pitched order. She said, "Nothing doing. If you don't pay the amount tomorrow, I will raid your house." He said, "How can you raid? You cannot raid." Said she sent a person for survey the next day. Survey officers are saying, "Sir, we don't have any work. We have been sent only to ensure that you pay the amount. They have targets to." So what happened? The assessee had to promise the officer saying, "I will pay this amount even before the stay petition comes." Then, of course, we went and we moved at the ITAT. We requested the ITAT to give an early hearing for the case. And before the survey officers were sent, we ensured the ITAT announced the stay in the court itself. They directed the officers not to initiate any coercive action and granted the stay. But you cannot keep going to ITAT for every decision. There has to be some sort of relief over there. And many officers they do coercive action on this survey power, and they go on, they threaten assessees, they make collections for their targets and all of this. So therefore, this new change will definitely be very beneficial to assessees, where a principal commissioner or principal CCIT has to approve it. Similarly, they have said no coercive or intrusive action can be done by assessing officers or TROs. It has to go for the approval to the principal commissioner or a principal chief commissioner. Now we've reached the end of the changes in the ITR form, but I thought I will take a minute or two to share important development that's going to affect all of us as auditors. You see, now that faceless assessment has come, the department are working on a very, very important project. So I was very closely involved with the entire faceless assessment and the implementation of the same. And when I was doing that, they told me that they are doing another new project called CPC 2.0. So they said, "Can you support for that also?" I said, "Okay, I will support for that." So the CPC 2.0 is going to be a game changer. Now, whenever you have internet connection, maybe with Airtel or Jio or some company like, whenever you have a problem with the company, you'll immediately call the customer care and you'll say, "Sir, I have a problem. Can you help me?" So what they will do, they will give you a ticket number. They'll keep following up. Is the problem resolved? Within the next 2 days, you will get one technician who will come to your house and he'll fix the internet connection. Then they will call you for the next 3 days. "Sir, is it working? Is it okay? Please give your feedback. We have a survey." Then again, next month, they will check everything is okay. So very, very nice corporate and professional approach they have. Now, department have woken up. They have said, we should also become amenable to this. Now, whatever department line is there, if you call, nobody answers. You are raising an issue, you don't know what is happening with it. Every time you have to go and say, "See, I have acknowledgement proof." So therefore, department said, let us make the life easier for the assessees. So therefore, they are coming out with something called CPC 2.2, where everything is going to be a very, very simple process. It is going to be like a corporate structure, and the returns are going to be pre-filled. All the data will be pre-filled, and they are going to have something known as a straight through processing. I file my return of income. Within the next 2 hours, it will be processed and refund also will be credited to the assessor in matter of 2 to 3 hours. They are going to have an integrated communication system. You no longer have to say, "Sir, can you help me with this?" No, you have to contact CPC. If you ask CPC, they'll say, "Power is the assessing officer." You go to assessing officer, he'll say, "No, no, you speak to the principal commissioner." You have to go to principal commissioner, he'll say, "This is too much for me. My level, I don't deal with this." You go meet the additional commissioner. So you will keep going from room to room. Finally, they will say, "Go back to CPC." These are all practical challenges many auditors are facing. Now, what they are saying, they are going to have a single integrated system where everything will be documented onto that. You do not have to go to X person, Y person, Z person like that. And if you raise a complaint, we'll ensure it is tracked and resolved for you. So therefore, you can see that there's going to be a very, very serious system and critical enhancement how they are going to make it simple. In fact, I got a screenshot with the person, the CPC director who's in charge is a very, very close friend. So I requested him to share a few things of how I can share it with publicly the information that they have done. So it is currently at a beta testing stage. And what you see on the screen is exactly how it has been developed. They have already reached the beta testing stage and they will be launching it shortly. But this is what it looks like. How to pre-validate, what your personal information is. All of this will come as pre-filled. All of this will come as pre-filled. So please remember, as auditors, our role becomes enhanced or it might get diluted, however you want to look at it. Because simple returns, what the income tax are trying to do is let the assessee file themselves. Let them not go to auditor. Let them not go to ITP. Ask them to file themselves. So that's what the department are trying to do by making it easier. So as auditors, we must enlighten our clients that it is not that simple. Maybe some salaried cases they can file like this, but many cases the assessees will be affected if they don't claim whatever tax benefits they have. Many assessees they get HRA income, but they don't submit their documents to the employer. They are not aware that end of the year they can claim it. So they will give it to Clear Tax, they will give it to some ITP in their office, and they will file it by not claiming anything. Nobody takes care, as if it is like a factory. They will say Form 16, whatever is there, copy paste, and they will process it. And this entire new CPC is designed for that sort of setup. So please remember, as auditors, our role becomes more important. We have to create awareness also. But definitely, the traditional tax filing practice is slowly coming under threat and is being diluted by the department. So we must keep it in mind that we have to ensure that we try to expand our practice. Due dates have been extended. I'm not going to spend time on this because everyone here is aware of it and it has been announced just a matter of days back. So this I will share the PPT with everyone who's watching. So you can definitely go through the same. All of these points I've already covered in the course of my presentation. Yeah, so I think with this, we have covered all the points. Thank you so much. I've also shared my email ID and my mobile number. This is my WhatsApp number here that you see on the screen. You can feel free to message me at any time. I share regular updates also with a lot of chartered accountants. So if you want the updates, you can just message me. I'll be happy to include you in the group. And if you want this presentation also, I'll be happy to share it with you. You can just leave me a message. I will save your number and we can be in touch. So with this, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address once again the members of the Tirupur branch. It's always been a pleasure to be here. We can take some questions now. How about you, Ramu sir? Over to you.
Sir, thank you, sir, for your wonderful presentation. So one second.
So we can the participants can either share their questions in the chat or they can unmute and ask also, whichever they are.
Participants can ask their questions. Participant நம்ம unmute பண்ணி சார்கிட்ட டைரக்டாவே questions எல்லாம் கேட்கலாம். Sir, one question, sir. For rectifications, they are allowing only 15 days time, sir. Even for knowing what is received, it takes more than 20 days. Then only only thereafter we have to decide how to rectify this error. Is there any representation can be made by the ICAI to the CPDT to extend that time, sir?
Yeah. So as Ramu sir, you must be aware that I'm a member of All India Taxpayer Association and I'm currently secretary there also. And we have already made a representation. And in fact, I'm also part of the committee that's interacting with the Ministry of Finance on the implementation of this e-assessment. So that was one point that I raised, that 154. Actually, when you see the 154 has been processed, the 154 order is not made available. You will just get one letter saying 154 has
Yes,
come
sir.
on so and so date.
Yeah,
But
we
what
have
has
not
come,
received
what
that order.
changes, nothing we don't know. That if the assessing officer know a lot of transfers happening, so if you go tell them, they are saying we cannot share, we cannot give. All of this is happening. So I made it very clear
Yes, sir.
that if the rectification is done, whatever rectification changes are made should be made available to the assessee also. You cannot
Yes,
make
sir.
a rectification on a whim and not share the details. They have taken it very positively. We'll definitely see a change very shortly, sir. It should come within the next month or two.
One more problem of the existing system is that, sir, there are two assessing officers. One is the CPC and another is jurisdictional assessing officer. Any letter we make to the one, he refers the other. That is also a problem. But recently, due to lockdown, many such issues were solved by the CPC itself, sir. நிறைய demands எல்லாம் delete பண்ணிட்டாங்க. Even hello. Refunds எல்லாம் சாங்ஷன் பண்ணி கொடுத்துருக்காங்க சார் இந்த லாக்டவுன் டைம்ல. That is a very useful initiative taken by the CBDT during this time, sir. Even in some of the cases they allowed us to file the rectification even after this extended time. இப்போ கூட நிறைய rectifications எல்லாம் வந்து ஃபைல் பண்றதுக்கு ஓப்பனிங்ல இருக்குது. Members can check the websites and do the corrections even if it is become late, even for 2 years earlier, before 18, 17 எல்லாம் இன்னும் open. Now it is they are opening and we can submit our rectification. Members, வேற ஏதாவது questions இருக்கா members?
Sir, I want to share one experience, sir. Actually, one of our clients,
please.
For the assessment year 2017-18, the return was filed and it was taken for scrutiny, and there was some difference of opinion. So I filed CIT. I prepared CIT appeal. Now it is pending with CIT appeal for the assessment year 2017-18. If that is in such scenario, now we have got a letter from department stating that it seems that you have got taxable income for the assessment year 2017-18 and you are not filing any return of income. Please file your income as early as possible. That return has come. So how it is possible, sir? Because the return was filed, the assessment was completed, it is pending with the CIT for appeal. Whereas they have issued another notice that it has come from some different officer. So, why such second thing, sir, once some demand might have been made by the department, then we might have substantiated that the amount was already paid. If we simply give a letter stating that the amount was already paid, then is it not their duty to check with their intel they want the challan to be attached with that?
They have challan also.
Why should I attach the challan? I say that it is paid. It is paid. Even I am ready to put in the letter. I mentioned the challan number, date, bank, everything I mentioned. But they want the challan copy. So one side the department is going paperless. On the other side, they want these types of formality.
You are absolutely right, Balaji sir. And maybe you will agree with me. Other members also will agree with me. There are scenarios where they are adjusting current year demand, or rather current year refund against a demand pertaining to 15, 16 years ago. Now, if they have to reopen, they can reopen maximum up to 6 years only. If they want to go for rectification, up to 4 years only they can do. If they want to do any other proceedings, which means under 154 revision, anything, they are all time barred. So therefore, when that person cannot even reopen, which is the most powerful power that he has, income tax officer, the biggest power he has reopening, up to 6 years he can go back. When he cannot even reopen, how he can adjust current year demand against 16 years ago demand, current year refund against 16 years ago demand? There is no proof that he has. There is no communication that he has. I asked the client, do you have any proof, any letter you have received? Sir, nothing I have got. So therefore, this is happening. And trust me, sir, I have taken it very, very seriously, Balaji, sir, because not only have I personally faced it, I know many auditors are facing this problem, where you are writing a response, you will reply on that income tax portal, work list, it will be pending. You will go and you will reply saying already paid, form 16 available, TDS has been deducted. Then it will be still pending for a very, very long time. It will be pending. They will not resolve it till you go meet the assistant officer and you get it rectified. It will never happen. And given current because of transfers, new officers are coming in. They are not doing it also. I have taken it up very seriously. I think luckily the CPC currently they are in a good position where they are accepting this. As Ramu sir very rightly said, they have been little assessee friendly in the last 6 months or so. So they have accepted this definitely is there as a problem. That is why that new CPC 2.0, that is why I touched upon that, because I know many members are facing this. Their whole point is once that CPC 2.0 comes, you will not have that problem. Where if you go to assessing officer, he'll say CPC. You go to CPC, they will say, no, that time it is manual filing, you go back to the assessing officer. All of those issues will be completely resolved when it comes to the CPC 2.0, and it will definitely come in the next 12 months, sir. Definitely.
Sir, can I make 2 points here, sir?
Yes,
Sir,
yes, Rama, sir.
regarding that second notice, sir, second notice, எங்க கிளைண்ட்டுக்கு அது மாதிரி ஒரு நோட்டீஸ் வந்தது. கடைசியில பார்த்தா கிளைண்ட் வந்து இன்னொரு பேன் நம்பர் வச்சிருக்காரு, ஓல்டு பேன் நம்பர். தட் இஸ் an old PAN number. It was given to some banks also, and there were some cash transactions in that bank, a small cash transaction, but we received a notice for referring to that bank account in the old PAN number. That may be the situation, sir. Because now it is made online, sir. Again, second time notice வர சான்ஸ் இருக்குமா தெரியல. இன்னொரு one more thing, sir.
Last exam வந்து private
Yeah.
possibilities of getting other PAN.
No, sir, one more, sir. அந்த சலான் மிஸ்மேட்ச் இருக்குல்லங்க சார். இப்போ வந்து இங்க பிசிக்கல் ஆபீஸ் இருக்குல்லங்க சார், only for the purpose of doing rectification on the letters submitted by us in the மேனுவல் லெட்டர்ஸ், ரெக்டிஃபிகேஷன் லெட்டர்ஸ் ஆஸ்க்ல ஃபைல் பண்ணிருக்கோம்லங்க சார். அந்த லெட்டர்ஸோட ரெக்டிஃபிகேஷன் ஒர்க்குக்காக மட்டுமே பிசிக்கல் ஆபீசஸ் ஓபன் ஆயிருக்கு சார். எனி மெம்பர் ஹேவ் எனி கிரீவன்சஸ், they can represent to our local officer so that all our old issues will be solved, sir.
Like for rectification power, it's been clarified, sir. Rectification power is with the assessing officers now. So
Yes.
if rectification case pending arko,
சலான் கரெக்ஷன்ஸ் அதெல்லாம் அந்த சலான்ல இயர் மிஸ்மேட்ச், செக்ஷன் மிஸ்மேட்சிங், நாட் பிக்கிங் த சலான், அந்த எல்லா ரெக்டிஃபிகேஷன்ஸும் லோக்கல் ஆபீஸ்லயே செஞ்சு தராங்க சார்.
இப்போ இமெயில்லயே பண்ணலாம் சார். நீங்க ஆபீஸ் நீங்க அந்த வெப்சைட்ல லாகின் பண்ணலாம். If you go to the profile,
yeah, yes.
You go to the profile, you will have the email ID of sir, jurisdiction officer. Email launchale they have been told to respond.
Definitely they are responding. Now they are responding, sir.
Problem.
Members, any questions?
Yes, Siddharth has asked a question. There is one question I will just read it out, sir.
Sir, while I admit that
yes,
amendment will naturally cause confusion in the minds of the assessees who are filing their returns on their own, because in 1 year they will have to file it in a particular return, and the next year immediately they may have to file it in a different return, and he is not a professional to go through the income tax act before filing his return of income. So that will definitely cause great confusion. That I agree. That is one point. Then one more small clarification I wanted to make. You said regarding this electricity expenditure incurred, if it is met by the son or daughter abroad, whether it is to be declared or not or something like that. There the word used is only electricity expenditure incurred and not electricity expenditure met by somebody. So it has been met by his son or daughter, that is, he has given money to the father or the mother and they have met the expenditure. So it's only a question of electricity expenditure met. So that is the only question that you will have to see. The second point is, suppose you have got more than one house, I got 2 houses or 3 houses, then the electricity consumed, one house I have given it for rent, then that electricity should also be taken into account or not is a natural doubt that I am having. Because I am going to meet him, if the rent agreement says that he will pay the rent and I will meet the electricity charges. So whatever electricity consumed by him, then I will have to meet the expenditure for him. Then that also is to be included for the purpose of this purpose, 1 lakh purpose. That is also another point. Then the next point is the foreign travel expenditure incurred. Foreign travel expenditure incurred is, of course, he has definitely added a specific word saying either for himself or also for others that he has added. That is not there in the case of electricity. Electricity, he has incurred, that's all. He has expenditure met, that's all. Whereas for foreign travel, he says either it is for him or for others. So the both are different. They cannot be compared on the same tube. That is another point. And then these declarations and other things, I hope that soon we will get an amendment saying that these declarations will come into effect only when a particular person has got a responsibility to file a particular form. If he doesn't have a responsibility to file a particular form, I don't think he will have to make these declarations. Then you may ask one question. the refund and the other things, even though he doesn't have a taxable income, the refund and other things, he has to file a form. Whether he has to declare. Yes, he has to declare. Because he gets the responsibility to file a return of income. So naturally, he'll have to declare. Those who do not come under the tax category, then and if they do not file the return of income, I don't think they will have to declare these things. This is my view, sir.
Yeah, to clarify, sir, I think you raised some very good points. I'll just clarify one by one. Yes, regarding that incurring of expenditure, you are right, your interpretation is correct. But the wording there, what they have said is you have incurred. So you drew reference to the foreign travel also. So the foreign travel, naturally, you are saying either for yourself or for others. So they are showing if you are incurring for others, means they have said over there. So bringing that same logic here, then if you are saying incurred by that person, then it must be for themselves. For others means they need not file for electricity bill like that you are saying. If that is the case, the son is incurring the expenditure for foreign travel for his mother, then he has to file the return of income. Son is incurring the expenditure for the electricity consumption, then nobody has to file the return of income. That is how your interpretation comes off. That is why I am saying very clearly, whether it is for yourself or for others, whoever is incurring the expenditure, they have to mandatorily file, because their logic is somebody should be made responsible. Your logic is fine. Whoever is consuming should be the one who eventually has to file the return of income. But there is an ambiguity there. Definitely there is a vagueness. There is yet to be clarity on that. But that's why I clarified in the end, saying this is an exceptional scenario. The logic is not to target this foreign citizen. The logic is to target those people who are doing business in cash. Almost entirely they are doing businesses in cash. For them only the entire amendment is there. So if you are a person who has to file the return of income regularly, that is, my income already exceeds the other conditions, 250 mela irukku, adana I have to file my return of income, then you don't even have to care about 7th proviso. It does not apply to you. It is only for people who don't meet the other criteria to file the return of income, then they have to file under 7th proviso. So,
sir, another one is not ordinary resident. They will have to declare the number of days they were in outside India. That is
yes,
also
sir.
a new thing which has been included.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Correct. The details also you have to disclose. So, CAS Siddharth has asked a question. I will just read it out.
Yes, sir.
Sir, we have e-assessment order. In that they have mentioned serial number 3, no addition is made. In serial number 4, assessment of income is done as per computation sheet. They have not considered ATIA deduction in the computation sheet. And we are going to prefer an appeal. What is your view, sir? Siddharth, this is a case of a error apparent on record. It's an error apparent on record. You can go for a rectification under section 154. So they will rectify there itself. Suppose over there it is not being able to done, then you can go on an appeal later also. So you will not be a delay in the appeal will not be there in that scenario. So you can always explain that you are looking for other remedies. So you can go for a rectification itself in this case.
Normally it happens
because of this
that
COVID.
requested form is not filed, sir. 10 CCB file பண்ணலைனா ATIA வந்து automatically it is disallowed, sir. That he has to check.
Correct. And the form file paniyano, sir. Similarly, where you are going for marginal relief, all of this you have certain additional forms. Where you are going for double taxation relief, all of these cases you have additional forms that need to be filed. Adu neenga file pannitnale they will accept it. They are not making a scene by saying that no, you should have filed before. They are accepting it, so you can file it now and then file a rectification.
Because of this COVID, the date for incurring the expenditure under section 80C was extended from 31st March to 30th June. And while the returns and other things have still been extended to 31st December, is there any extension for such expenditure to be made?
No, it was extended to 31st.
Why not we make a representation? When he is making this, why not he allow this also?
And it was extended to 31st July. They have not extended it further, sir. So that is
so far nothing has come, but can we make a representation for it?
I'll make a representation, but to my knowledge, they have very categorically stated they don't want to extend beyond 31st of July. I may not, but they have been quite clear when it comes to this. Anyway, I will discuss it. But to my knowledge, you will not get any further extensions. There will be 31st July last date.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, 192B ரிட்டன் ஃபைல் பண்றதுக்கு பர்மிஷன் கமிஷனர் ஆன்லைன்ல பண்றதுக்கு இன்னும் எனேபிள் பண்ணல இல்லீங்களா?
It is there, sir. 119 2B, service request போயிட்டு பண்ண முடியும், I think.
நான் tried it, but அங்க மாதிரி ஆப்ஷன் இல்லை. ரிவென்ஸ் தான் போற மாதிரி இருக்கு, சர்வீஸ் ரிக்வெஸ்ட் மாதிரி இல்லை. ரிவென்ஸ் மாதிரி கொடுத்த மாதிரி இருக்கலாம்.
போலாமா?
இது ஆக்சுவலி அது ஆன்லைன்ல இல்லனா பெட்டர் சார், ஃபாஸ்டா முடிக்கலாம். CM Kumar said, yeah, I'll just read it out, sir. My query on sharing of information between CBDT and CPIC. We filed the returns for 1920. The turnover as per GST is ₹100. The turnover as per TDS is 120, in which 20 return pertains to receivables accounted for the previous month. During the returns, we filed turnover as 100 only, for which we received defective returns saying TDS mismatch. Hence, accrual basis only to be filed this year. Right, sir. Now in the TDS forms, Mohan sir, till I think 2 years back, you had that difficulty where if you had the TDS, that year you have to admit it. So again, you will get a notice. In the notice only, you have to reply and file a resolution. Now, if there's accrual, you can put in your form, income tax return form itself. In the TDS schedule, you can say any carry forward, any brought forward, like that you can specify, and you can file it in your income tax return form itself. So therefore, just next time when you're filing, you ensure it's there, or you rectify. You file a revised return, or you go for a rectification, you can change that, sir. First come first, if you don't get a resolution, you can go and appeal, you can easily win, sir. C.A. Siddharth has asked again, how to file a rectification for the online order. I think this rectification 154, there's an issue online. Up to 2017-18 only, you can file the rectification on the system. It is not allowing for the last 2 years, if I'm not wrong. I don't know if they've changed it. I've made the representation to change, but as it stands, till assessment year 17-18 only, you can file the rectification online. However, physically you can file it, sir. You can go to whoever is your jurisdictional assessing officer. You can write by email, or you can file it physically also. They are being very responsive. All rectifications these days are being done in a matter of a week or 2 weeks. So you can immediately get a resolution. That too, your case seems very straightforward to me. Any more questions?
Any questions, sir?
Only thing is, you will be happy if our PPT can be sent to everyone.
Oh, sure.
That-
I will send it to the branch. I'll definitely send it to the branch. Once again, of course, members
Thank you,
can
Mr.
feel
Ramu
free to
will take-
contact me.
Mr. Ramu and
and,
Varadaraj will take care of it.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes,
sir.
yes.
Definitely.
Because members can always feel free. They can drop me a message if they want to get the regular updates.
Yeah.
I am sharing already with the Tirupur branch. Ramu sir and others are aware. But if anybody else wants additionally, you can feel free, sir. So, thank you once again. I thank the organizers for inviting me,
Thank you, sir.
especially Ramu sir.
Yeah.
And I always enjoy addressing the members of Tirupur branch and the interactive discussion. So I thank the members for being participating in such a lovely and lively way. Thank you all.